Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Turn Your Database into a Databank with MAPS coaches, Monica Reynolds and Brinley Tucker. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and you will automatically receive the webinar recording. If you have questions for your coaches, please type them into the question box located in your webinar taskbar. Following the webinar, if you have any questions about today's call, or coaching programs, please email us at fasttrack@kw.com. That's fasttrack@kw.com. That's all for me. Monica and Brinley, take it away.
Thank you,
Okay, good morning,
Carrie.
everyone, and good afternoon. It's Monica Reynolds and, of course, the great Brinley Tucker. Say
Good
hello, Brinley, to
morning.
everyone on this call.
Good morning. So excited to be here. What an amazing intro, Carrie. Carrie has such a great voice.
She does. It's like, wow, that's like a radio voice. That's
Isn't
cool.
it?
Thank
It
you.
Yeah.
is. It is. All right. It is. Okay. So with that said, everyone, so what is this database into a data bank? So the only thing, the only asset an agent has is the database. It is not their computers. It's not this software. It is the database. It is the database. And so when you look at that, and a lot of agents say, well, I want to go to third level, fourth level. No, I'm going to seventh level. You can't do those steps, can you, Brinley, unless you've got a database. So
No,
what
you
else would you
can't.
add to that?
I just, it's so crucial. I think we're talking a lot about technology today and all of the AI and how technology can just do things for us. And I think that we have to get back to realizing that without the foundation of a strong database, technology is not going to be able to really do anything for you. You've got to still have a database of relationships.
Yeah, and Gary was really clear about in his mastermind, and he said if you have 13,000 people in your database and you do 57 touches, he has documentation that you will end up with about 2 million GCI. And I know some of you on this call may just have 300 or 30 in your database. It doesn't matter. You have to start somewhere. So, Brinley and I have coached some of the very top teams, of course, in Keller Williams, and we've got some really clear systems on how to add to that database. So everyone should have a goal to ultimately, whether it's a 2-year, 3-year plan, whatever, to get to 15,000 people in your database. And so that's kind of what we're going to just touch on today, a little bit about how to look at this database. So the first slide, Brinley, let's do the health check.
Yeah, so when we look at our database, Monica and I have, Monica's had the perfect real estate assistant for how many years now, Monica?
Brinley, before you were born, in
Before
the
I was
80s,
born. In
early
the
80s, yes.
early when I was walking, when I was in diapers, right? Let's say it was before
Right.
I was born. And her and I have been doing the perfect operations team, and we found that we wanted to create a program that would go deeper. That would go deeper into the database because we started talking to a lot of teams and finding out that their databases weren't healthy. Jenny Wolick was just on stage at Masterminds, and she self-admittedly said that she had not been inspecting what she expected around the database and started calling, and with like 10 to 20 contacts in, she had already found one or two people that had listed with another realtor. And so the first and foremost, in order to build a strong database, is to know, what do your vitals look like? What contact information do you have in your database? Do you have name, phone number, email? And now we want to make sure that we have addresses so that command can work for us when it comes to market updates and more information that's going to be coming when the consumer app is rolled out. Are they tagged and categorized where they're supporting you? Are you able to go into your database and market to it based on how you have your contacts tagged? What's your input system? How do you get contacts? Let's say you're out at a golf tournament on Saturday and you meet, 50 people. How are you getting those contacts into your database? What if you're at a networking event and you make 45 contacts? How are you getting that into your database on Monday? What's the call schedule? How often are you calling your database? Gary's new 36 touch and MREA2 says that you should be calling your database once a quarter. Do you have a schedule to do that? What's accountability around your database? What does that look like? So are you accountable to calling? Are you accountable to making sure there's contact information? And then lastly, we're going to teach you, make it fun. through gamification. We have a lot of teams that are gamifying building their database and gamifying marketing to their database. So make it fun. It doesn't have to be this big daunting task because we get overwhelmed by the number of zeros that are at the end of our database. Oh my gosh, we have 15,000 people in our database and it's a mess and we don't know what to do. Well, let's make it fun, right, Monica?
Absolutely. And so when you look at this health check, in a future class that we have coming up in June, when you look at the call schedule, that is a huge piece of growing your database. So we have schedules on how to grow it to 5,000, 10,000, and 15,000, and what that schedule looks like. Basically, call schedule, cleaning up your database, making sure that everybody understands that you want repeat and referral business, asking that current client, who else do we need to know that you think would be someone who could use our services in the future. Learning all those different scripts, the accountability of the entire team to be part of the growth of the database. The database is the business. That is your book of business. And the bigger the database, the more opportunities you have. All right, so what's the next slide, Miss Brindley?
So the next one we're
boy.
talking, is defining your database. So this is, Monica, you've taught me the biggest 5 categories for referral. So why don't you dive into this for us?
Okay, so when you look at your database, 35% of your business comes from your database. So going back to the first slide in assessing your business, how many referrals did you get from your team? How many referrals did you get from your vendor? How many referrals did you get from your sphere of influence? How many past clients referrals did you get? How many realtor and co-ops, meaning agent referrals? So with that said, you're saying, okay, well, that's about referrals. Well, the bigger the vendor list, the bigger the past client list, the bigger the SOI list, especially the SOI list, the more you have those that you focus on in growing that business, then that 35% comes a part of a bigger number. So when you add all those up, those categories should be 35%. If you're getting more out of your database than 35% on referrals, good for you. However, be careful. It means sometimes that you don't have any new lead generation systems in place. And so we'll talk about that too in a future class about when you're lead generating, which ones go into that database. And with the different tags that Command has, and so we'll be bringing some of Command in. But the key is really assessing your database. What percentage did you get from a team? What percentage did you get from a vendor this last year? And how do you double that? And how do you double your database? So again, it's getting clear how many people are in that database for, say, your realtors. There's a ton of realtors right now in Keller Williams that have over 14,000, 15,000 agents in their Kelly network. So we're going to give you some really clear-cut examples of how to build that in a fast manner. Okay, Ms. Brindley, take the next slide.
Yeah, and another note on that, Monica, too, I think we can learn so much from Gary on this. Gary and Josh have really been pushing know your data, know your data. And I think defining the database and knowing those numbers that you spoke of is so important, because where are we putting our effort? We don't want to work dollar for hour. We want to work strategically and purposefully so that we can generate as much GCI as possible. And we don't know what type of return we're going to get if we're not tracking the data. So we're going to teach you in that future class how to track your data so that you're calling and spending time in your database in the areas that matter the most. So the next one that we came up with, and I think this is so amazing, is adding a 5th conversation. So we talk about the 4 conversations in Keller Williams. We talk about the buyer-seller appointments, agreements signed, which is listing agreements or buyer agreements taken, and then you have your wall of value. So the wall of value is where now you're crossing over into the line of, okay, we've had the appointment, we've signed the agreements, now we're going to actually do the activities that make us the money, which is the closings and the GCI. Well, we're adding a 5th conversation, and we're going to teach you how to add this 5th conversation, not just with your agents, yet also with your admin, with your staff, with everyone on the team. And that 5th conversation is, how many did we add to the Databank this week? How many people, Mets, non-Mets, how many contacts did we contribute this week, and what amount of future business should we, based on our ratios, should we achieve through adding that many to the data bank. And I just think we think this is so, so important because we need to be feeding the database every day and systematically marketing to it. So Monica, what do you have to add to that?
You know, if you're an agent listening to this call, the only asset you have when you want to step to the side, back or out, is your database. And I was just thinking, just going back to how you can add people to your database real quickly, and I just all of a sudden thought of, I made my termite guy in California a millionaire. He had 36 employees, and I think he had 6 or 7 trucks, whatever, rolling all the time, and he was going to a lot of my houses that I had just sold to do inspections and to fix things, etc. And I said to him one day, I said, how many employees do you have? And he says, oh, it runs between 30 and 36, off and on, depending on demand and what we need to do. And I go, okay, great. I need every name, address, phone number, where they currently live. I want to start calling them. I want to email them. I want to let them know that I help you guys with your business. And they go, oh, yeah, they know about you. And I go, I know, I'm going to ask them to find me one of their friends or family, or what are they going to do? And so there was 36 right there. Then you go and you think about every single vendor. So these are the kind of ideas and ways to grow the database. So you're not just saying, well, Gary says you should grow at 3 every day. So we're going to ask you to think about, how do you grow at 500 every month? How do you grow at 1,000 every month? And we're going to give you the formulas for that. Okay, good. Next one, Ms. Brindley.
The last thing that we wanted to focus on today, which I think is so important, is having the strategic marketing plan. So Gary tells us that in order to achieve generating GCI from your database, you have to have a certain number of METs in your database and strategically market to them. And one of Gary's biggest quotes, and he has a list of reasons that agents don't become millionaires. And one of them is that agents don't become millionaires because they don't build their business around a database. So many of us as agents just fly on the seat of our pants and just hope for that next home sale to come. We're not strategic and intentional with how we market to our database. And so we're going to teach you in this class in June how to systematically market to your database and to come up with strategic marketing plans that you will actually execute, and how to execute them, how to put things in place where they're automatic and you don't have to put as much effort into it on a weekly basis. You can set it and forget it, and set up the system so that the system works for you. Also, we talk about this and Gary talks about this in MREA, and he's tweaked it a little bit also with what Monica shared earlier around, the 50 contacts and the 2 million in GCI. We know that people that we have met, that we have relationships with, that we have name, phone number, email, and address to, if we put them on an 8x8 and a 36 touch, we will get a 12-to-2 ratio, meaning that for every 12 contacts in the database, you should sell 2 homes. For your haven't mets, that turns into a 50-to-1 ratio. So for farm areas, circle prospecting, those type of things, you're going to have a 50-to-1 ratio. Now, can those numbers fluctuate? Absolutely. Yet the point is that we know what those numbers are. We know how our database is working for us. We want our review referral conversion to be way above 50%. Imagine what your business could look like if your repeat referral was over 50%. And so some of the ways that we're going to talk about marketing are through those touch campaigns. Are you touching 56 times like Gary talks about throughout the year? And a lot of people think, oh my goodness, I can barely do 36. Well, we're going to give you some really, really easy tips of touches that you can do that won't require a ton more labor and work on your end. Client events. How are you executing your client events to grow your database? Also, how are you executing your client events to grow your repeat and referral? Client events are a massive opportunity for referral business and to grow the database, not just by your current clients that attend, yet their friends, their family. We're going to show you how to market client events to grow the database. Client loyalty programs. Do you have one? Do you know who your MVPs are? Do you know those in your top 20% of your database? And do you nurture to them the top 20% that are feeding your database on a regular basis? And then what are you doing to turn the other 80% into your 20%? Through customer loyalty programs. We've got teams that Monica and I have coached that are now doing, tiered loyalty programs where when you hit this level, you get this from us. When you hit this level, you get this from us. It's similar to a Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, Disney customer experience, and saying, when you help us, we help you, and we want to say thank you. And then also social media. How are you utilizing social media to grow the database? We just rolled out, we're labbing Bold 2.0 right now, Monica, in the Bold rooms. And I
Mm-hmm.
had a client yesterday that was in Bold, and how exciting it is that we now can use text messaging and social media to do our Bold 100. So it's the same thing. How are you utilizing other forms of technology to grow the database? So Monica, do you have anything to
Yeah.
add to that?
Yeah. So, for example, if when you take a listing as an agent or just since you're listening to this call, we're going to give you the scripts and how to approach the seller saying, would you post your home up for sale on your Facebook page? And then that gives you access into a lot of their users also. So with that said, here's what I want you guys to hear. This is not a hard thing, and it should be one of the most important things that's in your schedule to work on. So when you go back and look at some of the things today, hopefully you get out of the call, you've got to access your database. How many completes do you have? Name, address, phone number, and emails. The incomplete should be the first thing that you tackle starting immediately and start making those into completes. Gary gave out a statistic that was so frightening, and that's where this came from, is the fact that most agents are not purposeful about their database. So we can change all that. So Gary gave out a statistic at Family Reunion, and he said that he had 30,000 users on command, and when they exported their database over, only 8% had completes. So out of all those hundreds and hundreds of millions of emails and phone numbers and stuff, only 8% were complete. So if that's you, this class is for you. The key thing that I think you should hear from today's class: assess your database, assess your marketing campaign, think about the people who are not in your database that should be, think about your assistants. We have a complete program where every assistant would have at least 1,000 names and how they get there. Think about your buyer agents. Think about every vendor. Who do they know that you don't know that should be in there? And there are agents in Gary's Top 100 that have over 100,000 people in their database. And no, they're not all Mets, but there is name recognition. When you list a home, are you purposeful about getting the name, address, phone numbers, and emails of every single house around that, from 50 to 100, whatever's appropriate? What are you doing purposefully also once that home is sold? Are you door knocking it, saying, we have other buyers, I'd love to stay in contact with you when you plan to sell? Oh, I have your name and I have your address. Man, get your phone number and your email. We have all those scripts so that you can be very, very purposeful to grow your database. What else, Ms. Brindley, before we go to the next slide?
Well, I just think, it's adding, I think, Monica, you brought up some really great points that, so many times we just put names in the database and we set it and forget it. And do you know your database? Do you know the people in it? Are you nurturing it at such a high level that you could go into your database at any time, and whether you have it memorized or whether your notes are so strong that you know exactly who that person is? People always give me a hard time. They say, you have 5,000 friends on Facebook. And I say to them, yes, yet I can honestly tell you that I know who every single one of them are. I either know who they are or I know who I know them through. It's not 7 degrees of separation, it's one. So do you know your database that well? And if you don't, are you going back in and scrubbing it and cleaning it up on a regular basis to get to the point that you do? And I think that that's something that we all can work on in our businesses and with our relationships. I was rooming with at Masterminds with a realtor that has been out of she's kind of been on a little bit of a hiatus for a few years, and she's come back, and she's a veteran. She's been in real estate, Monica, since that old Howard Britton days. And she came back and she said, and I go, so how's it going? What have you heard? She did luxury, she did spring masterminds. And she goes, Brindley, I hear that it's all the same thing. Build relationships and nurture your relationships. And the data bank is the only way and the number one way that we can maintain and track those relationships so that they can turn into future business. Right, Monica?
Yeah, the value is when you want to grow a team, you got to have the database. When you want to step to the side, back or out, or 5th level, 6th level, 7th level, you have to have the database. if you want to make more money this year, you have to have the database. So it's when you go to recruit someone and you say, we have 8,000 people in our database that we contact 36 times plus 4 calls plus the Christmas card or Thanksgiving card, that's impressive to an agent who wants to join a team and is looking for support like that, meaning being fed a little bit, some leads. And so the database is the only asset. So, and unfortunately, it's not in anyone's schedule to work on every single week. In most cases, I rarely find anyone who has it really scheduled. I mean, they'll put it in and go, oh, we got to work on that. It's not like conscientious. And yet, every database can use a tune-up. Every database should be in a monthly meeting saying, what are we doing? What do we need to do? You need a marketing plan for the entire year. But you also need to be assessing your database at all times. And like we put on the five conversations that Brinley and I were thinking about, you need to know what that number is every month and see that it's growing. And we will teach you what not to purge, because there's too many times agents go, well, I've never heard from them. I don't even know who they are. Purge. And so there's no such thing as purge. We're not going to be doing that. And yet, when you are doing like circle prospecting and you end up finding out name, address, phone number of someone, you put them in there, put in the remarks how you know them. I sold a house on Cherry Street, 4 doors down. This was a circle prospecting call. So because after you start talking to them and you're mailing to them, they think you sold a house. And then I've gone out to many listings, Brinley, where, I walk in and they go, oh, thanks for coming over. It's so great you sold us this home. I didn't sell them the home, but I stayed in touch so much they just thought I was their realtor. So I wasn't going to correct them on that. I let that roll, and that happens all the time. So with that said, there's a lot of other things, like how do you build up the orphan buyer that buys your listing that's represented by a different agent out there? We've got all the techniques on how to build up that. Every listing you sell is your listing for life, no matter who buys it. So just wait for those techniques. So what's our next slide, Brinley?
Yes, and I think, Monica, that was a really great point that you brought up, is being able to resell your database. You never know what could happen tomorrow. And we've had agents that have exited the business, and yet they've been able to continue to generate passive income because of how strong their database was when they left.
Oh yeah, no, I can tell you stories. I've got agents that are really good friends of mine, like Karen Bernardi, like one of the top, if she's not the #1 Coldwell Banker agent still. She got bought out by, since she was with Century 21, Remax bought her out of that to come to be Remax, and she was in the top 5 in Boulder all the time, and because of her database. And then she got bought out again, paid another $1 million to come to Coldwell Banker. So she's made several $1 million moving because of her database in Boulder and how strong she is. So your database is your asset if you ever want to sell. So Brinley, I have a database of 300 I'd like to sell you. Or Brinley, I have a database after 10, 15 years or 5 years in real estate. I've got a database of 20,000. Which one's more exciting for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, we have a few of you putting questions in the question box. So if you do have questions for Monica and I, go ahead and put them in the chat box. We're going to give you a little bit more information on how to sign up. Today we've just kind of water skied over the database, and in this 4-month program that's rolling out in June, we're going to deep dive into all of this stuff. We're going to teach you how to use command to enhance your value proposition and how to grow your database. Monica, do you want to tell them a little bit about the course and who should sign up?
I will. So first of all, Brinley and I come from a big background of coaching, and Brinley's owns a transaction company and hiring company, and I've been a mega agent, been on a 7th level team, ran that for 10 years, the Rainmaker, netted $1 million every year. And the key thing that we focused on, and key thing that Brinley focuses on, is database. So when we were talking about it, a lot of people go, well, I'd like to grow my database to 5,000. That's not going to cut it. We've got a land grab right now. Zillow's after us. Zillow's going to be a company. They're looking for data all the time. They have a pretty darn good one so far. And so it's why not set up for 15,000 as the goal versus 5,000? And I know some of you probably have 300 in there, and you're not even sure if those are really good ones. However, the big picture is you want to get to 15,000, and we're going to give you very scalable systems with a very scalable schedule of how to do that. You've got to next determine the value of your database. So what is your repeat and referral business? How much business are you getting out of that database? And be honest about it. Go back and look at the sources of business for this year. Easy. Go back and look at the business for the sources of business last year, and really determine. So if you're below a accumulation of 35% for those different 5 sources, then you're not doing enough to get the value out. And you always want to look at this figure. So if you had 1,000 people in your database, you want 10% to be doing repeat or referral business with you. Now, with that said, obviously 15,000, you're looking at 1,500. I get the math. But it's the accumulation effect. It's the goal to focus on how do you get at least 10% of your database doing something with you. That's a great metric there. Yeah. And so with that said, we are going to be bringing in Command. They have an excellent different tags that you can put. So for an assistant should have at least 1,000 in her or his database. Those buyer agents should have that many. If somebody's lived in that town the whole time, I tell them they've got to have 2,000. So depending on who that is, I give them great goals to strive to. They're not going to do it overnight, but we have the systems for that. Command will be absolutely super important, and we'll show you how to use that to do your marketing plans and to absolutely build a systematic system where they are hearing from you, they're your realtor, and you are bringing value to them. And of course, you got to know how the scripts to do how to do all of these things, and how you get the seller to put it up on their Facebook page that their house is for sale and to contact you. You've got to have the scripts for the assistants to call their friends and family and get all that information and say, please use us. If you have any questions about real estate, you want to sell your home, you got to call me first. And getting those assistants empowered to see that that's part of their job is to build their own database. And so with that said, this course, it is only 4 months long. There are 12 calls, 3 calls per month. It's absolutely doable. We start out so that you are building with us, and at the end of the 12 weeks, you have a very precise system to put in place to build 15,000 people in your database. And that is a valuable, valuable database. So, and ultimately what that means, if you sign up, we can help build your incredible wealth, and your wealth is going to be in that database. And so I believe the calls are $199 a month for 4 months, and we look forward to you signing up. It starts June 13th, I believe. Isn't that right, Brinley?
Yes, June 13th. And just to wrap us up, we have a few questions in the chat box. We are going to make this specific to Command. I know there is so much so much info market leader that can be imported. We'll talk about how you can fix that and how you can use Command to grow your database. Somebody asked where they would be able to listen to this recording. It will be emailed out to all of the attendees following the call. Monica, this is a good one. If you can't get complete info because the person doesn't use email or has opted out of receiving my emails, what do you do?
If they've opted out from receiving your email, if they're really good friends and acquaintances, I'd call them and say, hey, I respect your decision. Do you mind if I still contact you from time to time? So take their email off. Now you got an incomplete, but if somebody requests that, you have to do that. If you don't know who they are, then it's a numbers game, in my personal opinion. Don't you agree, Brinley? If somebody says they want out, you get them out, because they'll make your life miserable. They'll report you to everybody. All the internet police will be on you.
Well, and I think we also keep, you keep them on you categorize them differently so that you still reach out, because people's lives change also. So there may be ways to still reach out to them. You just don't reach out to them that often, and other ways that you can get creative.
And I have another thought. If they're opting out, then you are bringing no value. And so that's a real critical thing in building your databases. You want to be known as the guru of real estate. You want to be the value. Every email, every piece should have some value that gave them some information about their most valuable asset, which is their home. So usually people shouldn't opt out.
Yeah. So a couple other things. You are able to set up a 36 touch in Command. There's some ways to do that that we're going to go over, and then they're also building more every day. So more and more is rolling out. Somebody said that this is geared just towards teams. It's actually not. This is massively geared towards
Oh
anyone
no,
that has a database. So
golly,
this is
yeah.
ops. This is leadership. This is single agents. This is teams. This is about the database. It's not
If I
about
was,
the
yeah,
person.
if I was brand new in the business right now, and not when the dark ages when the dinosaurs were rolling around, and someone gave me a stack of 3x5 cards and said, put your database on that, and somebody said you need to have 2,000 people in your database. It was not purposeful. If you're a brand new agent or newer agent, this is where you start. You start with your database. Who do you know? I mean, this is perfect for the beginner, the intermediate agent, the agent that is growing. It's for everybody.
Yeah,
Everybody has the
absolutely.
same asset, database. And how is yours?
Absolutely.
Would I want to buy your database today from you if I'm coming to town? How
Yeah.
much is it? Is it worth anything? That's what we're trying to really help any agent
So,
at any level.
so it's $199 a month for 4 months, and it's 3 calls a month. Also, this is going to be both how to build your database and then also setting up the entire working system. So this is a deep dive. This isn't going to be just how to feed it. This is going to be how to feed it and then how to systematically set up the systems to market to it. Also, question, how many hours a week would you put into database management, Monica?
Okay, so the question is, how fast do you want to be wealthy?
Yeah, true.
How
Very
fast
true.
do you want your lead generation systems to have more people to call? So, the reality is that if you don't have an assistant, then you are doing your own assisting, and then we're going to give you some other options about what it might cost to hire a virtual to go and look up all these other things that you need to look up and figure out, or even call people and get their information. So if you're a single agent, then I'm going to say to you, you should have at least 2 hours minimum a week. And if you don't have an appointment in the afternoon, you should spend 4 hours on it. You should spend any time you're not on an appointment, you're lead generating, your lead follow up, you're writing contracts, you need to be looking at your database. You need to be seeing who you can call, who you can add.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we want to be respectful of everyone's time. Um, People are asking about
Yes.
campaigns in Command. We'll be going over that. We'll be talking about how you can get some things out of Market Leader. In the meantime, I would be keeping an eye on the KW Command blogs and rollouts. There's a Facebook group on KW Command. And then typically the materials after 4 months are available 60 days after the recording. So you do have
You have lots of time to catch up,
lots of
right?
time. And you are able to work this class while you're
Yeah.
in Bold too. It will actually, if you're starting Bold in June, this class will just actually help enhance you. It'll be a great time to do Bold and
Good.
dive deep because you'll have double accountability. You'll have your Bold
Yep.
accountability, and we'll be going into deep dive things that Bold won't be covering. So it's a great combination.
Okay.
Anything else, Monica?
Yeah. No, I think that's it, everyone. Thank you. We went a couple minutes over. We respect your time. Sign up for the course. Bridley and I have a great time. You'll always have a few fun laughs with us. So let's get to work on that data bank. Thanks, everyone.
Let's
Have a great
do
day.
it. We'll see
Bye-bye.
you in June. Bye-bye.